bear cub was crying from inside a tree trunk. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun peeked through the tall pine trees, casting dancing shadows across the wooden floor of the Morgan family's forest cabin. Lily Morgan, barely 10 months old, sat on a colorful playmat near the open window, her chubby fingers stacking soft blocks that tumbled down every few seconds. Her giggles filled the cozy living room as her mother, Amelia, prepared breakfast in the adjoining kitchen. "Just a few more minutes, sweetie," Amelia called out, flipping pancakes on the sizzling griddle. Her husband, Noah, had left at dawn to collect firewood, promising to return before breakfast. The cabin, their weekend retreat from busy city life, stood in a clearing surrounded by ancient trees and wildlife. Lily suddenly stopped playing. Her head tilted to one side, her bright blue eyes wide with curiosity. A strange sound drifted through the open window. Not the usual cheerful bird song or rustling leaves, but something different. Something sad. It came again, a faint, high-pitched whimper that made Lily's tiny eyebrows furrow. In the dense woods beyond their cabin, about 50 yards from their porch, a small brown bear cub trembled inside a hollow tree trunk. His fur was matted with dirt and sap, his eyes wide with fear. Hours earlier, he had wandered away from his mother while she foraged for berries. Curiosity had led him to investigate the old oak tree with its tempting hollow opening at the base. He had squeezed in easily enough, but now found himself trapped, unable to maneuver his small body back through the narrow exit. The cub let out another cry, louder this time. His tiny paws scratched frantically against the rough inner bark, but the more he struggled, the more tightly he seemed to wedge himself into the confined space. Hunger and thirst magnified his distress, and his cries grew more desperate with each passing minute. Lily's head turned toward the sound again. Something about the cry touched her in a way she couldn't understand, but deeply felt. She dropped her colorful block and crawled toward the window, pulling herself up on wobbly legs by gripping the windowsill. Her eyes scanned the tree line as another plaintive cry echoed across the clearing. "What do you see out there, little explorer?" Amelia asked, glancing over her shoulder. She assumed her daughter was watching squirrels or birds, common visitors to their cabin yard. "Breakfast is almost ready. Daddy should be back any minute." But Lily wasn't interested in breakfast or waiting for her father. The sad cries called to her, stirring something protective in her innocent heart. When Amelia turned back to the stove to remove the final pancake, Lily lowered herself back to the floor and began crawling toward the partially open front door. The door Noah had failed to close properly when he left that morning. Meanwhile, a group of 4 hikers made their way along a trail that passed near the trapped cub. Vera Donovan, a tall woman with a red bandana tied around her neck, heard the whimpering first. "Do you guys hear that?" she asked, pausing to adjust her backpack. Her friend Marcus Chen stopped beside her, taking a swig from his water bottle. "Sounds like an animal, probably just a raccoon or something." "It sounds distressed," said Camilla Winters, the youngest of the group, her freckled face concerned as she pushed her glasses up her nose. The 4th hiker, Dario Ruiz, shrugged his broad shoulders. "Whatever it is, we should keep moving. We've got 5 miles to go before we reach the viewpoint. And I'm not missing that sunset because of some woodland creature having a bad day." "But," Camilla began, only to be cut off by Marcus. "Dario's right. Park rangers handle wildlife issues. It's not safe for us to interfere." He gestured down the path. "Come on, let's keep going." Reluctantly, Vera and Camilla followed the men, the cubs' cries growing fainter as they moved away. None of them noticed the small figure of baby Lily, who had managed to crawl out the front door of the cabin and was now sitting on the porch steps, her head turned toward the forest, listening intently to the sounds that her mother, busy in the kitchen, could no longer hear. What the hikers also didn't know was that somewhere deeper in the forest, a large female bear was becoming increasingly agitated. Mother bears are fiercely protective, their sense of smell extraordinary, and this mother could smell her cub's fear on the wind. She lifted her massive head, nostrils flaring, and began moving through the undergrowth with determined steps, following the scent of her lost baby. Back at the cabin, Lily pushed herself off the bottom step and began crawling across the cleared yard, drawn by the pitiful cries coming from the woods. Her determination was extraordinary for one so young, each movement purposeful, her eyes fixed on the tree line ahead. The soft grass tickled her palms as she moved, but she kept going, leaving behind the safety of her home. Inside the kitchen, Amelia placed the stack of pancakes on the table and wiped her hands on a dishcloth. "Lily, breakfast time," she called cheerfully. When no baby giggles answered her, she frowned. "Lily?" She walked into the living room, expecting to see her daughter still playing with her blocks. The empty playmat sent a jolt of panic through her chest. "Lily," she called louder, rushing to check the bedroom, the bathroom, any place her adventurous baby might have crawled to. Finding nothing, her heart began to race. That's when she noticed the front door standing ajar, sunlight streaming through the opening. "No, no, no," she whispered, dashing to the door. Her eyes frantically scanned the porch, then widened in horror as she spotted her baby girl halfway across the yard, crawling steadily toward the forest edge. "Lily!" Amelia screamed, bolting from the cabin. But at that exact moment, the worst possible sound filled the air. A deep, throaty growl from within the forest. The mother bear had arrived, and she was close. Too close. And Lily, innocent and unafraid, continued crawling toward the crying bear cub, unaware of the danger that awaited her in the shadows of the ancient trees. Amelia's heart pounded against her ribs as she raced across the yard. Each second stretched into eternity, her daughter's small form growing closer to the forest edge with every determined movement. The growl came again, deeper this time, sending birds scattering from nearby trees. "Lily, stop!" Amelia screamed, her voice breaking with terror. The distance between them seemed impossible, her legs leaden despite her desperate sprint. But Lily, driven by something beyond her mother's understanding, didn't stop. The bear cub's cries had become more urgent, as if sensing help was approaching. The tiny baby girl reached the first line of trees just as Amelia closed half the distance between them. Inside the hollow tree trunk, the bear cub pressed his wet nose against a small crack, catching an unfamiliar scent approaching. It wasn't his mother. This scent was different, yet somehow not frightening. His whimpers softened slightly, curiosity momentarily overriding his distress. At that moment, Noah emerged from a different section of the forest, arms laden with firewood. He froze at the tableau before him. His wife running frantically across the yard, his baby daughter at the forest edge, and the unmistakable sound of a bear somewhere in the trees ahead. "Amelia!" he shouted, dropping the wood with a clatter. "What's happening?" "Lily!" was all Amelia could scream back, pointing ahead as she ran. Noah didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward his daughter, cutting across the yard at an angle, desperation giving him speed. The growing rumble of the mother bear sent ice through his veins. He knew the protective instincts of wild animals, knew the devastating power in those massive paws and jaws. But there was someone else approaching the scene as well. Isaiah Blackwood, a 67-year-old forest ranger who lived in a cabin about a mile away, had been tracking the mother bear since early morning. A lifetime in these woods had taught him to recognize when something was amiss with the local wildlife. He'd spotted the agitated female bear hours ago and had been following at a safe distance, concerned about her increasing distress. When he heard the human voices, Isaiah quickened his pace. Years of experience told him that bears and humans in close proximity rarely ended well for either party. Pushing through a thicket of brambles, he emerged into a clearing just in time to see Lily reach the hollow tree. The baby girl placed her tiny palm against the rough bark, right next to the crack where the cub's nose poked through. A soft coo escaped her lips, an instinctive sound of comfort that carried across the suddenly silent forest. Isaiah stood motionless, his weathered hand reaching slowly for the tranquilizer gun holstered at his hip. 40 years as a ranger had taught him to move with deliberate care in wildlife encounters, but he'd never witnessed anything like this. A human baby and a bear cub, separated by mere inches of tree bark, while a mother bear approached from one direction and the baby's parents from another. "Don't move," he called out softly to Noah and Amelia, who had both frozen at the sight of the old ranger. Any sudden movements might trigger the mother bear. "But our baby," Amelia began, her voice a choked whisper. "I know," Isaiah replied, his eyes never leaving Lily. "Just wait." Bear cub was crying from inside a tree trunk. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun peeked through the tall pine trees, casting dancing shadows across the wooden floor of the Morgan family's forest cabin. Lily Morgan, barely 10 months old, sat on a colorful playmat near the open window, her chubby fingers stacking soft blocks that tumbled down every few seconds. Her giggles filled the cozy living room as her mother, Amelia, prepared breakfast in the adjoining kitchen. "Just a few more minutes, sweetie," Amelia called out, flipping pancakes on the sizzling griddle. Her husband, Noah, had left at dawn to collect firewood, promising to return before breakfast. The cabin, their weekend retreat from busy city life, stood in a clearing surrounded by ancient trees and wildlife. Lily suddenly stopped playing. Her head tilted to one side, her bright blue eyes wide with curiosity. A strange sound drifted through the open window. Not the usual cheerful bird song or rustling leaves, but something different. Something sad. It came again, a faint, high-pitched whimper that made Lily's tiny eyebrows furrow. In the dense woods beyond their cabin, about 50 yards from their porch, a small brown bear cub trembled inside a hollow tree trunk. His fur was matted with dirt and sap, his eyes wide with fear. Hours earlier, he had wandered away from his mother while she foraged for berries. Curiosity had led him to investigate the old oak tree with its tempting hollow opening at the base. He had squeezed in easily enough, but now found himself trapped, unable to maneuver his small body back through the narrow exit. The cub let out another cry, louder this time. His tiny paws scratched frantically against the rough inner bark, but the more he struggled, the more tightly he seemed to wedge himself into the confined space. Hunger and thirst magnified his distress, and his cries grew more desperate with each passing minute. Lily's head turned toward the sound again. Something about the cry touched her in a way she couldn't understand, but deeply felt. She dropped her colorful block and crawled toward the window, pulling herself up on wobbly legs by gripping the windowsill. Her eyes scanned the tree line as another plaintive cry echoed across the clearing. "What do you see out there, little explorer?" Amelia asked, glancing over her shoulder. She assumed her daughter was watching squirrels or birds, common visitors to their cabin yard. "Breakfast is almost ready. Daddy should be back any minute." But Lily wasn't interested in breakfast or waiting for her father. The sad cries called to her, stirring something protective in her innocent heart. When Amelia turned back to the stove to remove the final pancake, Lily lowered herself back to the floor and began crawling toward the partially opened front door. The door Noah had failed to close properly when he left that morning. Meanwhile, a group of 4 hikers made their way along a trail that passed near the trapped cub. Vera Donovan, a tall woman with a red bandana tied around her neck, heard the whimpering first. "Do you guys hear that?" she asked, pausing to adjust her backpack. Her friend Marcus Chen stopped beside her, taking a swig from his water bottle. "Sounds like an animal, probably just a raccoon or something." "It sounds distressed," said Camilla Winters, the youngest of the group, her freckled face concerned as she pushed her glasses up her nose. The 4th hiker, Dario Ruiz, shrugged his broad shoulders. "Whatever it is, we should keep moving. We've got 5 miles to go before we reach the viewpoint. And I'm not missing that sunset because of some woodland creature having a bad day." "But," Camilla began, only to be cut off by Marcus. "Dario's right. Park rangers handle wildlife issues. It's not safe for us to interfere." He gestured down the path. "Come on, let's keep going." Reluctantly, Vera and Camilla followed the men, the cub's cries growing fainter as they moved away. None of them noticed the small figure of baby Lily, who had managed to crawl out the front door of the cabin and was now sitting on the porch steps, her head turned toward the forest, listening intently to the sounds that her mother, busy in the kitchen, could no longer hear. What the hikers also didn't know was that somewhere deeper in the forest, a large female bear was becoming increasingly agitated. Mother bears are fiercely protective, their sense of smell extraordinary, and this mother could smell her cub's fear on the wind. She lifted her massive head, nostrils flaring, and began moving through the undergrowth with determined steps, following the scent of her lost baby. "Sweet merciful heavens," breathed Marcus, his earlier dismissal of the animal's distress forgotten in the face of this extraordinary tableau. The bear's response defied everything Isaiah had learned in his decades of wildlife management. She gently nudged her cub with her nose, pushing it toward the forest, but then did something utterly unprecedented. She looked directly at Lily, then at her parents, and made a soft chuffing sound again before slowly, deliberately backing away. It was as if, in some way beyond human understanding, she recognized what had happened, that this strange, tiny human had helped her baby when other humans had passed by. Whether this interpretation was accurate or merely the wishful thinking of awestruck observers would be debated for years to come. As the bear retreated, keeping her eyes on the humans but without further signs of aggression, Noah finally broke free of Isaiah's restraining hand. He dashed forward and scooped Lily into his arms, holding her tight against his chest as he backed rapidly away from the bears. "Slowly," Isaiah cautioned, still holding his tranquilizer gun at the ready. "No sudden movements." The mother bear gathered her cub close, nudging it deeper into the forest. With one final look back, a look that Clara's camera captured in perfect focus, she disappeared among the trees, taking her rescued baby with her. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the clearing. Amelia collapsed to her knees, overcome with relief and lingering terror. Lily, secure in her father's arms, began to cry, not from fear, but from being separated from her newfound friend. "I've never," Isaiah began, then shook his head, lost for words for perhaps the first time in his long career. That was... Vera tried, equally unable to articulate what they had just witnessed. Dario stood with his phone still halfway out of his pocket, his earlier indifference replaced by stunned silence. It was Camilla who finally found her voice. "She knew," she said softly. "Somehow, that baby knew the cub was trapped and needed help." As the group began to recover from their shock, none of them noticed Clara slowly retreating through the underbrush, her camera filled with images that would soon captivate the world and change our understanding of cross-species empathy forever. Noah carried Lily back to her mother, who enveloped them both in a fierce embrace. "What were you thinking?" she sobbed against his shoulder, though the question wasn't really meant for anyone. How could they explain the actions of a baby too young to speak? How could they rationalize what they had just witnessed? What they didn't know then, as they made their shaky way back to the cabin with Isaiah and the hikers following close behind, was that this encounter was just the beginning. The connection formed in those miraculous moments between Lily Morgan and the bear cub would have repercussions that none of them could possibly foresee, repercussions that would stretch far beyond this forest and this day. Back at the cabin, Amelia's hand shook as she made coffee for the adults gathered around the worn kitchen table. Lily sat on Noah's lap, seemingly unaffected by the morning's events, happily playing with a wooden spoon. The hikers had accepted the invitation to come inside, still processing what they had witnessed. Isaiah Blackwood sat quietly, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug. His tranquilizer gun rested against the wall by the door, unneeded in the end, though he couldn't quite believe it. "In 43 years as a ranger," he finally said, breaking the heavy silence, "I've never seen anything like that. By all natural laws, that mother bear should have attacked." He looked at Lily with something approaching reverence. "Your daughter did something impossible today." Camilla leaned forward, her glasses sliding down her nose. The way she knew the cub was trapped. How could she possibly have known that? "Children have intuition we lose as adults," Vera suggested, though her tone suggested even she didn't fully believe this explanation was sufficient. Dario, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the encounter, suddenly spoke up. Has she ever done anything like this before? Anything unusual?" Amelia and Noah exchanged a look that didn't go unnoticed by Isaiah. The ranger's eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't the first time, is it?" he asked softly. Noah sighed, bouncing Lily gently on his knee. "There have been incidents. Small things, mostly. Birds that should fly away when approached but sit calmly on her blanket instead. The neighbor's aggressive dog that no one can pet becomes gentle around her." He paused. "We thought they were coincidences." "Until the fox," Amelia added quietly. "The fox?" Marcus prompted. Amelia nodded. "Last month, we found a wounded fox in our garden. It had a trap caught on its paw, was clearly in pain and terrified. Noah went to call animal control, and when I turned around," she swallowed hard, "Lily had crawled to it. Before I could reach her, she was touching its injured paw. The fox just let her. It stayed perfectly still until help arrived. That's why we came here for the weekend," Noah explained. "We thought some time away from everything might help us figure out what's happening with our daughter." Isaiah studied Lily thoughtfully. The baby girl gurgled happily, seemingly oblivious to being the center of attention. "Have you ever heard of animal empaths, Mr. Morgan?" "Like horse whisperers?" Noah asked skeptically. "Similar, but much rarer." Isaiah set his coffee down. "There are documented cases of individuals with extraordinary connections to animals, people who can sense animal distress, communicate in ways science can't explain." He nodded toward Lily. "Most cases involve adults who've spent decades developing these abilities. I've never heard of it manifesting in someone so young." Hidden in the lining of Isaiah's jacket was a small recording device, standard equipment for rangers documenting wildlife encounters. It captured every word of this conversation, a conversation that would eventually reach the ears of people far beyond this forest cabin. Meanwhile, Clara Winters was hiking rapidly back to her campsite, 2 miles away. Her heart raced from more than just the exertion. The images on her camera were extraordinary. A human baby touching noses with a bear cub, a mother bear standing over them both without aggression. In 20 years of wildlife photography, she had never captured anything remotely like this. What Clara didn't know as she reached her tent and began downloading the images to her laptop was that she wasn't the only one who had documented the encounter. High above the forest, almost invisible against the bright blue sky, a research drone had been tracking the mother bear as part of a university wildlife study. Its cameras had captured the entire scene from above. Lily's crawl into the forest, the release of the cub, the mother bear's unprecedented reaction. Back at Eastern Washington University's Wildlife Biology Department, Dr. Eleanor Patel stared at her monitor in disbelief as the drone footage streamed in. She picked up her phone with trembling fingers and dialed a number she rarely used. "Alexander, it's Ellie Patel. I need you to see something." Now. Halfway across the country, in a sleek high-rise building in Chicago, Alexander Reeves ended the call and turned to the wall of screens in his private office. As the founder of the Interspecies Communication Initiative, he had spent decades searching for evidence of meaningful connection between humans and wildlife. Now, according to his old colleague, something remarkable had been captured on film. Within the hour, the drone footage was playing on his private server. Alexander watched it 3 times before allowing himself to believe what he was seeing. Then he pressed a button on his desk. "Janet, cancel my meetings for the next week and get the jet ready. I'm going to Washington State." Back at the Morgan cabin, the conversation had turned practical. Isaiah was explaining the importance of reporting bear encounters, even non-aggressive ones, when a knock at the door startled everyone. Noah opened it to find a woman in her early 30s standing on the porch, her curly hair windblown, her expression both excited and apologetic. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said quickly. "My name is Clara Winters. I'm a wildlife photographer. I was in the forest this morning and I saw what happened with your daughter and the bears." The room fell silent as Clara was invited inside and explained her presence. When she hesitantly asked permission to show them the photographs, the group gathered around her camera, gasping at the crystal-clear images of Lily face-to-face with the bear cub. "These are incredible," Vera breathed. "They look almost staged, like something from a fairy tale." "I need to submit these to my editor," Clara said, "but I wanted your permission first." She looked at Amelia and Noah. "These photos could be important for wildlife research, for understanding bear behavior. But I understand if you have concerns about your daughter being identified." Before they could respond, Lily, who had been contentedly playing in Noah's lap, suddenly became agitated. She began fussing, then crying, not her usual hungry or tired cry, but something different, more urgent. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Amelia asked, reaching for her daughter. Lily pushed away from her father, struggling to get down. When Noah set her on the floor, she immediately began crawling toward the door, her determination as strong as it had been earlier that morning. "No, Lily, stay inside," Noah said firmly, picking her up again. But Lily's cries grew more insistent. She pointed repeatedly at the door, her small face contorted with what looked remarkably like worry. Isaiah's ranger instincts kicked in. He moved to the window and scanned the tree line. "There's something out there," he said quietly. "Something's wrong." He unholstered his tranquilizer gun and moved to the door. "Stay inside," he instructed the others as he stepped onto the porch. The group watched anxiously through the windows as Isaiah surveyed the clearing. He was about to return inside when a movement at the forest edge caught his attention. He raised his binoculars. "Oh no," he murmured, lowering them quickly and rushing back to the cabin. "There's a group of hunters about half a mile east of here. I recognize them. Local men who've been cited before for hunting too close to residential areas." His expression was grim. "They've got tracking dogs with them, and they're heading in the direction the bears went." Lily's cries increased in volume and urgency. Noah bounced her gently, trying to calm her, but nothing worked. It was as if she understood Isaiah's words, as if she knew the danger facing her forest friends. "Isn't bear hunting illegal in this area?" Camilla asked, her face pale. "Very illegal," Isaiah confirmed grimly. "These men don't care. They've been after that mother bear for 2 seasons now." He checked his radio. "I need to call this in, but the nearest ranger station is 30 minutes away. By then—" He didn't finish the sentence. Noah looked down at his wailing daughter, then at his wife. Something passed between them, an unspoken understanding, a decision. "We have to do something," Noah said firmly. "That mother bear spared our daughter. We can't just let it be killed." "What exactly do you propose?" Marcus asked incredulously. "We're talking about armed hunters." "I'm not suggesting a confrontation," Noah clarified. "But Isaiah knows these woods. If we can find the bears first, maybe we can scare them deeper into the protected area, away from the hunters." "That's dangerous," Isaiah warned, even as he found himself considering the possibility. "But not as dangerous as letting those men get to that bear and her cub." He made a decision. "I'll go. The rest of you stay here." "I'm coming with you," Clara said immediately. "I know which direction they went. I tracked them for a while before turning back." "Me too," said Camilla, surprising her fellow hikers. "I couldn't live with myself if I walked away now." Dario shook his head. "This is insane. We're talking about risking our lives for wild animals." "Not just any wild animals," Vera reminded him. "Animals that showed remarkable restraint and intelligence. Animals that could have killed that baby but didn't." As the group debated, Lily suddenly stopped crying. Her blue eyes focused on the doorway with an intensity that seemed impossible for one so young. She pointed again, this time with purpose rather than distress. "Look," Amelia whispered. Standing at the threshold of the open door was a small figure. A local girl about 12 years old, with dark braided hair and serious eyes. She wore worn jeans and a faded green jacket too large for her slender frame. "You need to hurry," the girl said without preamble. "The hunters have picked up their trail." "Who are you?" Isaiah asked, surprised by the child's sudden appearance. "How do you know about the hunters?" "My name is May," the girl replied simply. "My grandfather is teaching them to track. He doesn't know they plan to kill the bear." Her eyes fell on Lily, and something like recognition flickered across her young face. "Your baby has the old magic, like my grandmother did." The adults exchanged confused glances, but Lily had stopped crying entirely. She reached toward May, making the grabbing motion babies use when they want to be held by someone. "Old magic?" Amelia repeated uncertainly. "The animals speak," May explained, as if it were obvious. "Some people are born with it. My grandmother could call birds from the sky and speak with wolves. Your daughter has it stronger than anyone I've ever seen." She gestured impatiently toward the forest. "There's no time to explain. The mother bear and her cub are headed for the rock trap." "The canyon," Isaiah translated, his expression darkening. "If the hunters corner them there—" "We need to go," May insisted. "Now." The urgency in her voice galvanized the group. Quick decisions were made. Amelia would stay at the cabin with Lily, though the baby protested loudly at being left behind. Noah, Isaiah, Clara, Camilla, and surprisingly, Dario and Marcus would follow May into the forest. Vera volunteered to drive to the ranger station to bring reinforcements. As the search party prepared to leave, gathering water bottles and Isaiah's spare emergency kit, Lily became increasingly agitated again. She stretched her arms toward May, then to the door, making it clear she wanted to join the rescue mission. "She can't stay behind," May said firmly. "The bears will listen to her." "Absolutely not," Noah refused. "It's too dangerous. She's just a baby." "The bears protected her," May countered. "They will do it again. And she may be the only one who can lead us to them in time." A tense standoff ensued, with Amelia and Noah refusing to endanger their daughter further, while May insisted that without Lily, they might fail to save the bears. It was Isaiah who finally offered a compromise. "I have a carrier in my truck," he said, "the kind you wear on your chest. If you're determined to go, Noah, you can carry Lily safely. But at the first sign of danger, you turn back immediately." "This is insane," Marcus muttered. "We're really going to bring a baby on a bear rescue mission?" But looking at Lily's determined little face, something told everyone present that this was exactly what needed to happen. The old magic, as May called it, or whatever extraordinary connection had formed between the baby and the bears, might be their only hope of reaching the animals before the hunters did. Within minutes, they were entering the forest, an unlikely search party with an even more unlikely guide. Lily, strapped securely to her father's chest, had become completely calm the moment they stepped among the trees. She pointed with surprising authority, tiny finger indicating directions that made May nod in agreement. What none of them realized was that their actions were being observed from multiple vantage points. The research drone had returned, now tracking their progress through the forest canopy. And deeper in the woods, a man in camouflage clothing spoke quietly into a satellite phone. "Sir, there's been a development. The child is on the move and she's not alone." He listened for a moment. "Yes, sir, I understand. Continue observation only." He ended the call and melted back into the forest, following the search party at a discreet distance. The connection between Lily Morgan and the bears was extraordinary enough, but the attention it had already attracted, from university researchers to mysterious organizations, from local hunters to a girl who spoke of old magic, suggested that the consequences of this remarkable encounter were only beginning to unfold. As they moved deeper into the ancient forest, the trees seeming to close behind them like silent guardians, none of them could have predicted the true nature of the journey they were embarking on, a journey that would challenge their understanding of the natural world and humanity's place within it. Behind them, Vera started the drive to the ranger station, her mind racing. As she rounded the first bend in the forest road, her cell phone, forgotten in the cup holder, lit up with an incoming call. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in years: Alexander Reeves. Had she seen it, she might have understood sooner just how far-reaching the ripples of this extraordinary day would become. And somewhere in the forest depths, the mother bear paused in her retreat, her head lifting as if sensing something. The cub pressed against her leg, no longer afraid but alert. Together they waited, as if somehow knowing that their fate and the fate of the tiny human who had helped them were now inextricably linked. In her carrier against Noah's chest, Lily Morgan reached out with one small hand, as if trying to touch something visible only to her, threads of connection spreading through the forest like golden light, binding together the hearts of those who could sense them, human and animal alike. The forest thickened as they moved deeper, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns that shifted with each breeze. Isaiah led the way, his experienced eyes scanning for signs of both bears and hunters. May walked beside him, occasionally conferring in hushed tones, her knowledge of these woods clearly rivaling the ranger's despite her young age. Noah followed closely, one protective hand resting on Lily's back as she rode in the carrier against his chest. The baby remained unusually quiet, her blue eyes wide and alert, occasionally pointing in directions that made May nod with quiet certainty. "Who exactly is this kid?" Dario whispered to Marcus as they hiked. "And why are we following her like she's some kind of wilderness guru?" Marcus shrugged, his earlier skepticism now mingled with reluctant curiosity. "I don't know, but Isaiah seems to trust her, and after what we saw this morning." Behind them, Camilla adjusted her glasses, keeping her voice low as she addressed Clara. "Have you ever photographed anything like what happened today, in all your wildlife work?" The photographer shook her head, her camera bouncing against her hip as she navigated around a fallen log. "Never. Not even close. There are documented cases of different species coexisting or even helping each other, but what that bear did, consciously choosing not to attack when her cub was involved, that defies everything we understand about ursine behavior. It's like those stories you hear about dolphins protecting swimmers from sharks or elephants guarding lost children," Camilla mused. "Except those cases are rare and disputed," Clara replied. "What we witnessed was—" She trailed off, unable to find adequate words. "Magic," Camilla supplied softly, glancing ahead at Lily. "That's what May called it, right? The old magic." Before Clara could respond, Isaiah held up his hand, signaling for the group to stop. He crouched down, examining something on the forest floor. "Bear tracks," he confirmed quietly. "Fresh. The mother and cub passed through here less than an hour ago." He pointed to another set of prints nearby. "And these are dog tracks. The hunters are following the same trail." "How far ahead are they?" Noah asked, instinctively holding Lily closer. Isaiah's weathered face was grim. "Not far enough." He turned to May. "You mentioned a rock trap. You mean the canyon with the steep walls?" The girl nodded solemnly. "Three Pines Canyon. If the bears get cornered there, they'll have nowhere to go." Her dark eyes flicked to Lily. "We need to hurry." As if understanding the urgency, Lily made a soft sound and pointed to a barely visible deer path branching off to the right. "That's not the main trail," Isaiah objected, frowning at the overgrown path. "It's faster," May insisted. "The path curves around, but this cuts straight through. My grandfather showed me." Isaiah hesitated, then nodded. "Lead on, then." They left the established trail, pushing through underbrush and navigating increasingly difficult terrain. The forest seemed to grow more primeval with each step, the trees older and more massive, the undergrowth thicker. Strange rock formations began to appear, ancient boulders covered in moss and lichen, some arranged in configurations that seemed almost deliberate. "These stones," Camilla whispered, brushing her fingers across a moss-covered surface etched with faint symbols. "Are these petroglyphs?" May glanced back. "Grandfather says our ancestors left messages in the stones, warnings, instructions." She pointed ahead. "This is sacred land. The animals know it. The hunters shouldn't be here." "Whose sacred land?" Dario asked, a note of challenge in his voice. "I don't remember seeing any reservation boundaries." "Not everything sacred has a fence around it," May replied simply, continuing forward without further explanation. As they moved deeper into this ancient section of forest, an unusual silence fell. The typical woodland sounds, birdsong, rustling leaves, chattering squirrels, faded away, replaced by a profound stillness that seemed to press against their ears. "Something's wrong," Marcus muttered, his earlier skepticism giving way to unease. "It's too quiet." Lily suddenly became agitated, squirming in her carrier and making urgent sounds. She pointed repeatedly to their left, away from the path May was following. "What is it, sweetie?" Noah asked, trying to soothe her. Isaiah raised his binoculars, scanning in the direction Lily indicated. "I don't see anything, but—" He paused, adjusting the focus. "Wait, there's movement about 200 yards that way." May closed her eyes briefly, as if listening to something only she could hear. "The hunters have split up," she said with certainty. "2 are following the main trail with the dogs. 3 others are circling around to cut off the bear's escape route." "How could you possibly know that?" Dario demanded. Instead of answering, May looked to Isaiah for confirmation. The ranger nodded slowly, impressed despite his natural skepticism. "The strategy makes sense. It's how you'd trap a bear if you knew these woods." He studied May with new respect. "Your grandfather taught you well." "My grandfather would never help kill a mother bear," May replied, her young face suddenly fierce. "He tracks to protect, not to hunt. The men must have lied to him about why they needed his tracking skills." Noah shifted Lily to a more comfortable position. "How much further to this canyon?" "Half a mile," Isaiah estimated. "But if what May says is true, we need to intercept the bears before they reach it." He made a quick decision. "We should split up too. I'll take May and try to get ahead of the bears, redirect them away from the canyon. The rest of you circle around to warn off the hunters." "Warn them off? How, exactly?" Marcus asked skeptically. "They're armed." "I have flares," Isaiah replied, removing 2 from his pack and handing them to Noah. "If you spot the hunters, fire one of these. It's illegal to discharge firearms when emergency flares are visible. Standard safety protocol. It might buy us some time until backup arrives. I'm going with you and May," Noah stated firmly, gesturing to Lily. "She seems to know where the bears are." Isaiah hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Clara, you go too. Document everything. If these hunters are breaking the law, we'll want evidence." "I'll go with the flare team," Camilla volunteered, surprising her hiking companions. "I did search and rescue in college. I know how to use these." They quickly divided the supplies, Isaiah providing Dario and Marcus with a detailed map showing their position and the likely location of the hunters. As they prepared to separate, Lily made a series of urgent babbling sounds, reaching toward May. The young girl moved closer, her serious eyes meeting the baby's gaze. Something unspoken seemed to pass between them, something that made the adults exchange uneasy glances. "She says there's another way," May translated softly. "A place where the bears will be safe." "She says," Dario repeated incredulously. "She's a baby. She can't talk." "Not with words," May agreed, still looking at Lily. "But she's speaking clearly to those who know how to listen." She turned to Isaiah. "We need to head northeast, not toward the canyon. There's a place my grandmother showed me once. A sanctuary." As the group finished dividing their supplies, no one noticed that the mysterious observer in camouflage had crept close enough to overhear their plans. He slipped away silently, moving through the forest with practiced ease, and when he was a safe distance away, he retrieved his satellite phone once more. "Sir, they're splitting up. The child, her father, the ranger, the local girl, and the photographer are heading northeast." He listened briefly. "Yes, sir. According to the local girl, they're heading for some kind of sanctuary." Another pause. "Understood. I'll maintain surveillance on the primary target." Miles away, in a sleek black helicopter racing over the Washington landscape, Alexander Reeves ended the call and turned to his companion. "They're heading for the sanctuary, Elena. Dr. Elena Kostova, the world's foremost expert on interspecies communication and Reeves' research partner for 20 years, raised an eyebrow. The sanctuary hasn't been accessed in decades. How would they even know about it? According to our operative, they're being guided by a local indigenous girl. Reeves checked the helicopter's navigation system. And apparently, the Morgan baby is communicating with her somehow. That's impossible, Elena stated flatly. The child is 10 months old, pre-verbal, and yet she somehow communicated with a wild bear this morning. Reeves smiled thinly. Perhaps it's time to expand our definition of verbal, Elena. The helicopter banked slightly, heading northeast across the vast forest. What about our contact at the university? Elena asked. Dr. Patel has the drone footage. She's been instructed to secure it. No copies, no uploads. Reeves' expression remained carefully neutral. This situation requires careful management. Back in the forest, the two groups had separated. Dario, Marcus, and Camilla headed west, following Isaiah's directions toward where they expected to find the hunters. The flares were secured in Camilla's pack, along with a first aid kit and emergency supplies. I still think this is insane, Dario muttered as they pushed through a thicket of ferns. We're risking our lives for a bear. After what we saw this morning, can you really still think of it as just a bear? Camilla challenged. What else would it be? Dario demanded. Camilla didn't answer immediately, her mind replaying the extraordinary scene. The mother bear standing over Lily, choosing restraint over aggression, making what appeared to be a conscious, almost human decision. I don't know, she admitted finally. But I think that's why we're all here, to find out. Meanwhile, Isaiah led Noah, Lily, May, and Clara northeast, moving at a pace that balanced urgency with caution. Lily had settled again, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed almost like humming. Strangely, whenever she did this, nearby birds would fall silent, as if listening. Where exactly are we going? Noah asked May, who walked beside him, her eyes constantly scanning the forest ahead. To the Whispering Stones, the girl replied. It's a sacred place where animals go for protection. My grandmother was the last guardian. Before she died, she showed me the way, but I've never gone there alone. Guardian of what? Clara asked, intrigued. May's expression became guarded. I'm not supposed to talk about it with outsiders. We're trying to help the bears, Noah reminded her gently. Anything you can tell us might make a difference. The girl was silent for several moments as they navigated around a massive, fallen cedar. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. My grandmother said it's a place where the walls between worlds are thin, where animals and humans can understand each other if their hearts are open. She glanced at Lily. Some people are born with the ability to cross those walls anywhere. My grandmother called them bridge souls. Noah looked down at his daughter, who was contentedly chewing on her fist, seemingly ordinary once more. And you think Lily is one of these bridge souls? I know she is, May said with absolute certainty. I can see it around her, like light. Isaiah, who had been listening to this exchange with a carefully neutral expression, suddenly raised his hand for silence. He pointed ahead to where the forest opened into a small clearing. Just visible on the other side were two dark shapes moving slowly between the trees. The bears, he whispered. Noah's heart raced as he instinctively took a step back, shielding Lily with his arms. But his daughter had already seen the bears. She let out a happy squeal, bouncing in her carrier and reaching toward them with both hands. The sound carried across the clearing. The mother bear stopped abruptly, her massive head swinging toward them. For a tense moment, she stood perfectly still, nostrils flaring as she tested the air. Beside her, the cub pressed close to her leg, but its posture showed curiosity rather than fear. What happened next would later be described differently by each witness. Isaiah would report that the mother bear made a series of vocalizations, grunts and huffs that seemed unusually patterned. Clara would swear that Lily responded with her own sounds, creating an eerie mimicry of the bear's calls. Noah would remember only the hammering of his heart and the strange certainty that his daughter was in no danger, despite every paternal instinct screaming otherwise. May, however, would claim something far more extraordinary, that in that moment words had formed in her mind, clear as spoken language, conveying the bear's confusion, fear, and desperate need to protect her cub. The mother bear took a hesitant step toward them, then another. Isaiah quietly unholstered his tranquilizer gun, though he didn't raise it. "Don't move," he breathed. "Let's see what she does." Lily continued her happy babbling, straining forward in her carrier. The mother bear approached slowly, each step deliberate, until she stood at the edge of the clearing, barely 30 feet away. Close enough for them to see the intelligence in her dark eyes, to feel the weight of her assessment. The cub, emboldened by its mother's calm, darted forward a few steps before being gently checked by a massive paw. It made a plaintive sound, looking up at its mother, then back at the humans, particularly at Lily. "She recognizes your daughter," Clara whispered, her camera forgotten at her side. "This is incredible." Then came the distant baying of hounds, faint but distinct, carrying through the forest from somewhere behind them. The mother bear's demeanor changed instantly, her head rising, muscles tensing beneath her thick fur. The cub pressed against her, suddenly fearful. "The hunter's dogs," Isaiah confirmed grimly. "They've picked up the trail." The mother bear made a deep, rumbling sound. Without warning, she turned and began moving away, nudging her cub ahead of her, but not back the way they had come. Instead, she headed northeast, in the exact direction May had been leading them. "She's going to the sanctuary," May said with quiet certainty. "She knows the way." "How would a bear know about your sacred place?" Noah asked, his voice betraying his confusion and fear. "All animals know," May replied simply. "They just can't always find it without help." She looked meaningfully at Lily. "Without a bridge." The dog's baying grew louder. Isaiah made a quick decision. "We follow the bears. They're heading away from the hunters, which is what we wanted." "Directly following a mother bear with her cub?" Clara questioned, though she was already adjusting her pack, ready to move. "At a distance," Isaiah clarified, "and with Lily." He glanced at the baby, who was still watching the departing bears with rapt attention. "Well, let's just say the normal rules don't seem to apply today." They set off after the bears, maintaining a respectful distance but keeping them in sight. The mother bear set a surprisingly fast pace, weaving through the forest with purpose rather than panic. Occasionally, she would pause, looking back as if to ensure they were following. "This is not normal bear behavior," Isaiah murmured, shaking his head in amazement. "It's almost like she's leading us," Noah finished, equally astonished. "Or leading Lily," May suggested quietly. As they followed, the forest began to change subtly around them. The trees grew more ancient, their massive trunks covered in luminous moss that seemed to glow with an inner light. The undergrowth thinned, revealing a forest floor carpeted with ferns and wildflowers that shouldn't have been blooming in this season. Strange rock formations appeared with increasing frequency, standing stones covered in weathered symbols, some arranged in circles or archways. Clara photographed everything, her professional detachment warring with growing wonder. "These formations can't be natural," she whispered to Noah. "But they look ancient. How is it possible no one has documented this area before?" "People don't find the sanctuary unless they're meant to," May explained, overhearing. "My grandmother said it's protected." Noah might have dismissed this as childish fantasy just hours earlier. Now, watching his infant daughter apparently communicating with wild bears, following them through an increasingly mystical landscape, he found himself unable to discount anything. A sudden crash in the underbrush behind them made everyone freeze. Isaiah raised his tranquilizer gun, stepping protectively in front of the others. But it was Camilla who burst through the ferns, her face flushed with exertion, glasses askew. "The hunters," she gasped, bending over to catch her breath. "They're coming. All 5 of them. We tried to slow them down, but—" She broke off, looking around in confusion at the strange, moss-covered stones surrounding them. "Where are we? This wasn't on the map." "Where are Dario and Marcus?" Isaiah demanded. "They fired a flare to try to stop the hunters, but these guys aren't normal hunters." Camilla's voice shook slightly. "One of them had military-grade equipment, thermal imaging, satellite communications. They knew exactly who we were and what we were doing." She swallowed hard. "Dario and Marcus are leading them on a false trail, but it won't fool them for long." "Military equipment? For a bear hunt?" Clara shook her head in disbelief. "That makes no sense." "Unless they're not really hunting bears," Isaiah said slowly, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. His eyes went to Lily, still securely strapped to Noah's chest. "Unless they're hunting something else entirely." Before anyone could respond, Lily made an urgent sound, pointing ahead to where the bears had paused beside a massive stone archway, formed by 2 standing stones with a third balanced across the top. Ancient symbols covered every inch of the weathered rock surface, glowing faintly with the same phosphorescent moss that seemed to be everywhere now. The mother bear looked back at them, then deliberately walked through the archway. Her cub followed, and to everyone's astonishment they both seemed to shimmer slightly as they passed beneath the stone. "The gateway," May whispered, her young face alight with wonder. "Grandmother said it would appear when needed." She stepped forward with newfound confidence. "We need to go through. We'll be safe on the other side." "The other side of what?" Noah asked, instinctively tightening his hold on Lily. "It's just an archway." But even as he said it, he could see that it wasn't just anything. The space beyond the stones looked different somehow, the colors more vivid, the light softer and more golden, the forms of the trees and ferns slightly blurred, as if viewed through flowing water. "I don't understand what's happening," Noah admitted, fear evident in his voice. "What is this place?" May stood beside the archway, suddenly seeming older than her years. "My grandmother called it the Vale of Whispers. It's a boundary between this world and the spirit world of animals. Most humans can't cross, but some can." She nodded at Lily. "Bridge souls can, and those who accompany them." The dog's baying was much closer now, accompanied by the shouts of men. Time was running out. "This is crazy," Camilla whispered, staring at the archway in disbelief. "You're talking about what? Another dimension?" "I'm talking about sanctuary," May replied simply. "For those who need it." Her dark eyes met Noah's. "Your daughter led us here for a reason. The bears are already safe. Now you must choose." Lily squirmed in her carrier, reaching eagerly toward the archway, making the same urgent sound she'd made when trying to help the trapped cub. Her tiny face shone with determination and something else, a wisdom that seemed impossibly ancient in one so young. Noah looked back at the forest they had traversed, then at the strange gateway before them. The baying of the hounds grew louder. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had evolved into something he couldn't begin to comprehend. Yet, one thing was clear: his daughter was part of it, connected to it in ways he was only beginning to glimpse. "I don't believe in magic," he said finally, looking down at Lily's upturned face. "But I believe in my daughter." He stepped forward. "Let's go." "Wait," Clara protested, her photographer's instincts momentarily overriding her wonder. "We should document this. If what May says is true, this is extraordinary, historic." "Some things aren't meant to be documented," Isaiah said quietly, having made his own decision. "Some things are just meant to be experienced." He turned to Camilla. "You don't have to come. You can head back. Tell them you lost us." Camilla adjusted her glasses, a determined set to her jaw. "After everything I've seen today?" "Not a chance." She stepped forward to join them. "Besides, Dario and Marcus can handle themselves. They're leading the hunters away from here." What none of them knew was that the hunters had never been fooled by the diversion. At that very moment, Dario and Marcus were being escorted, at gunpoint, back to a black SUV parked on a remote forest road. The men surrounding them wore tactical gear, their faces expressionless, their weapons held with professional competence. "Who are you people?" Dario demanded, fear making his voice crack. "We're just hikers." The man, who appeared to be in charge, studied him coldly. "Where is the child?" "What child?" Marcus asked, genuinely confused. "We don't have any child with us." "The Morgan baby," the man clarified, his patience visibly thinning. "Where did the others take her?" Dario and Marcus exchanged baffled looks. "Look, we got separated from our friends, that's all. There was a bear and a ranger and—" "Destination," the leader interrupted. "I won't ask again." It was Marcus who finally answered, his survival instinct overriding any loyalty to people he'd only met hours ago. "They were heading northeast, something about a sanctuary, some sacred place the local girl knew about." The leader nodded slightly, then spoke into his radio. "Targets heading for the Whisper Sanctuary. All units converge." He glanced at Dario and Marcus. "Secure these two and resume pursuit." Meanwhile, in the helicopter rapidly approaching the forest, Alexander Reeves received the transmission. His normally composed face showed a rare glimpse of genuine emotion, something between excitement and alarm. "The Whisper Sanctuary," he repeated, turning to Elena, "after all these years. If they enter the sanctuary with the child, we may lose access," Elena warned. "The boundaries have been closed to us since Morella Blackfoot died." "Morella?" Alexander's brow furrowed. "The indigenous woman who worked with our program in the 90s? I thought she just quit." "She did more than quit," Elena replied grimly. "She took the keys with her, metaphorically speaking. Shut us out of the sanctuaries completely." Alexander's expression hardened. "Well, it seems her granddaughter may have just reopened the door." He checked the helicopter's position. "How long until we reach them?" 10 minutes, maybe less." "It may already be too late," Alexander murmured, staring down at the vast forest below. "If they cross the veil—" Back at the stone archway, Noah had made his decision. With Lily secured against his chest, her small hands reaching eagerly toward the luminous gateway, he stepped forward. Isaiah and Camilla flanked him, with Clara close behind, her camera now lowered in respect for the magnitude of what they were experiencing. May stood beside the archway, her expression solemn. "Once we cross, things will be different," she warned. "You'll see and hear things your minds may not be ready for. Stay close to me and Lily." Noah nodded, his throat tight with emotions he couldn't name. Can we come back? The veil opens both ways for bridge souls, May assured him, glancing at Lily. But it only opens when there's need. With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, May stepped through the archway and seemed to ripple slightly, like a reflection in disturbed water. Noah followed, holding his breath. As he passed beneath the ancient stone, he felt a sensation like cool silk brushing against his skin, a gentle resistance that yielded as Lily made a sound of delight. And then they were through, into a world both familiar and profoundly changed. The forest remained, but somehow more alive, more vibrant. Colors held depths he had never perceived before. Sounds carried meanings he almost, but not quite, understood. The air itself seemed to whisper with countless voices. Isaiah and Camilla followed, their expressions transforming from apprehension to wonder as they crossed. Clara came last, her photographer's eye struggling to process the subtle but profound differences in this strange new reality. "The bears," Noah said, looking around. "Where did they go?" "They're here," May replied, pointing to a clearing ahead where the mother bear and her cub waited beside a pool of water so clear it appeared luminous. "They've been waiting for us." As the group approached cautiously, the mother bear turned to face them. In the normal world, her dark eyes had seemed intelligent but animal. Here, they held something unmistakably more, a sentience, a depth of awareness that made Noah catch his breath. "Can she understand us?" he asked uncertainly. "All animals understand more than humans realize," May explained. "Here, in the sanctuary, the barriers are gone. Here, we can finally listen." As if to demonstrate this extraordinary claim, the mother bear made a series of sounds, not the random grunts and huffs of an animal, but patterned, deliberate vocalizations that somehow, impossibly, resolved themselves into meanings in Noah's mind. Gratitude, protection, warning. I can hear her," Camilla whispered, her face pale with shock. "Not words, exactly, but meanings," Isaiah finished, his ranger's pragmatism struggling against the evidence of his senses. "Intentions." Lily babbled happily in her carrier, making sounds that seemed to mimic the bear's vocalizations. To everyone's amazement, the mother bear responded, her massive head tilting as if listening intently to the baby's nonsensical sounds. Understanding? Agreement? Urgency? "They're communicating," Clara breathed, her camera forgotten in her hands. "Actually communicating." May nodded, unsurprised. Lily is a true bridge soul. Even here, where all barriers are lowered, her connection is special. She looked around at the mystical forest, her young face grave. "We are safe for now, but the sanctuary is in danger. Those men, the ones pretending to be hunters, they've been searching for this place for a long time." "Why?" Noah asked, still trying to process the reality of his 10-month-old daughter apparently holding a conversation with a wild bear. Before May could answer, a sound like distant thunder rolled through the sanctuary. The mother bear growled, her posture becoming defensive. Her cub whimpered, pressing against her leg. "They're trying to open the veil," May explained, alarm evident in her voice. "They can't cross without a bridge soul, but they can damage the gateway." "Who are they?" Isaiah demanded. "What do they want?" May's expression darkened. "My grandmother called them the Silencers. They seek to control the bridges between worlds, to use them." Her eyes went to Lily. "To use those who can cross." The implications of this statement hung in the air, disturbing and profound. Noah instinctively held Lily closer, suddenly understanding that the hunters had never been pursuing bears at all. They had been pursuing his daughter. Another roll of thunder shook the sanctuary, and the luminous quality of the air seemed to flicker slightly. Even the mother bear looked uneasy, making urgent sounds that translated into clear warnings in their minds. Danger, invasion, protection. "What do we do?" Noah asked, looking from May to the bears and back again. "How do we stop them?"